So moving on to the next part. So far we've discussed logical operators, comparison operators, if, elif, else. Now we're going to move on to the next concept in computer science that is going to be very much at the core of a lot of what you do here, which are loops. So what are the idea of loops? So if I give you an if statement, let's say I give you the following line of code, the following program, x equals 5. I say if x equals to 5, print, hello. Print hello. Okay. Now the way that this works is x equals to 5. It checks if x equals to 5, and then it prints hello, and then we come here, and then we print done. So this will check is x equal to 5. In this case, that is true. And then it'll print hello, and then it'll move on, and then it'll print done at the end. Now, in this scenario, the if statement, this part where it checks if x equals to 5, this is done once. Then after that, it comes down here. Once this is done, the program will simply move on to the next line. However, sometimes, or rather, I'd say many times, we want to repeat the same code multiple times, so long as a certain condition is met. This is the idea of loops. This is where loops come into play. This is where loops come in. Loops essentially allow us to perform repeated steps of code, to perform repeated steps of code. So what does that mean? So, and this is something we do quite often in our daily life. For example, you are walking is a perfect example. It is a repeated step. For example, I'm going to continue to drink water until the glass is empty. So long as there is water in the glass, I will keep on drinking water. For example, I will continue to push down on the gas pedal as long as there is no stop sign or there is no traffic light. As soon as there is a stop sign or traffic light, my foot is off the gas pedal. So this idea of loops, you are continuously repeating the same thing on and on and on, so long as a certain condition is met. Once that condition is false, once that condition is gone, then that loop is broken out of. So this is why loops are kind of similar to if statements, because just like with if statements, so the first type of loop we're going to cover is a while loop. Just like with if statements, while loops require a condition to be true before entering into the block. I'm going to give you a very simple example of a while loop to give you an idea of what it looks like. So let's say we have the following. Now, before that, actually, there are two types of while loops that we will cover in this class. While loops that we'll cover in this class. That we will cover in this class. Number one is a while loop with an iteration variable, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. Iteration variable / a condition, let's just say. And then we're going to cover a while true loop. So right now we're going to cover this first one. So let's start off with this first one, number 1. Let's say we have n equals 5, and then we say while n is greater than 0, print the value of n equals to n minus 1, and then print done, and then print n. Okay. So let us trace this code for a moment. First things first. In this scenario, so this, in this case, in this code, in this piece of code, n is called the iteration variable. It's called the iteration variable. Iteration variable. It is the variable. It is the variable that essentially controls the while loop. That essentially controls the while loop. What does that mean? So look at this code. So n equals 5. So this is saying while so long as n is greater than 0, you're going to print out the value of n. Then you're going to do this. And then you're going to come back here. Check again. Is n greater than 0? If it is still greater than 0, then perform these exact same 2 steps again. Print n equals. Then again, go back up. Again, check. Is n greater than 0? If it is still greater than 0, do this again. And then do this again, and then go up again, and keep on going, and keep on going, and keep on going. Once this is false, once n is not greater than 0, then you're going to move down here. So if we were to draw this on the side, so let's say the initial value of n is 5, okay? So when n is 5, it comes here, it checks, is n greater than 0? 5 is greater than 0, so that is true. So this is what the value of n is, and this is what we're going to say the output is, what the output. So it will print n, so it will print 5. N equals n minus 1. So now the new value of n will be n equals n 5 minus 1, 4. It'll go up here, it'll check, is 4 greater than 0? Yes, okay. So it'll print and the value of n, which is now 4. Then it does n equals n minus 1, which will now be 3. Then it'll go up, it'll check, is n greater than 0? N is 3, so yes, it'll print out 3. Then it'll print out n again, and then it will turn n to 2. Then it'll go up, it'll check, is n still greater than 0? Yes, it is. 2 is greater than 0, so it'll print 2. And then after that, it'll change the value of n to 1. Then after that, it'll go up, check, is n greater than 0? Yes, 1 is indeed greater than 0. So it'll then print 1, the value of n, and then it will turn it to 0. Then when it goes up, is 0 greater than 0? No, that is false. If it was an equal sign, if it was 0 less than or equal to 0, then yes, that's true. But in this case, it is 0 greater than 0. So that is false. And so now then, the loop is going to, it'll exit the loop. It'll come down here. It'll then print done. And then it'll print the value of n, which is now 0. And so it'll print 0. So n is called the iteration variable. So the iteration variable. So whatever the iteration variable is, whatever it is, I could have replaced this. I could have called this x. I could have called this y. I could have called this, I could have called this num. I could have called it whatever I want. I just chose to call it n. Whatever you call it, obviously whatever you choose the name to be, you have to be consistent throughout the entire code. So, 1 second. So then n equals to 5. Okay? So n is equal to 5, so that means now then I will have to keep it as n. So whatever the iteration variable is, you must update its value. Its value inside of the while loop. Inside of the while loop. Why do you have to? And I'll show you right now why. So let's say you have n equals 5. Again, well, this time just to show you guys, let me use another name. Let's just say number. Let's just say num equals to 5. I say while num greater than 0, print num, and then I'll say print, I'll just say print looping, and then I'll say, okay, that's it, that's enough. Okay, and then print the bottom, done, print num. So let's now trace this code really quickly. So we have the value of num, and then same thing as above, we'll put that, what the output will be down here. So the initial value of num is 5. It comes here, it prints num, so it prints the value of num, which is 5, and then it prints looping, okay? Okay? So then, once it does that, it goes up again. What is the value of num? 5. 5 is greater than 0, so it'll come down again, it'll print the value of num, which is 5. Then it'll come down here, it'll print looping. Then again, it will come up here again. Value of num is 5, greater than 0. Yes, that's true. So it'll come down here, print num, print looping. Again, come back here. Num, what is num greater than 0? Yes, the value of num is 5, as we have here. So it'll print 5. Now you should start to notice what's happening. This is the danger of not updating the iteration variable. So if you do not update the iteration variable at all, if you do not update the iteration variable, you will run into what's called an infinite loop. You will run into an infinite loop. This is a loop. So if you notice, again, looking at the output right here, you'll see what? It's going to keep on saying 5, looping, 5, looping, 5, looping forever and ever and ever and ever. This is a loop that will go on forever. That will go on forever and will never stop. That will go on forever and will basically freeze or pause your program. Freeze the program. It'll keep on saying 5 looping forever, and it'll never move down here to print done or print num. It'll never exit. As it will never exit the loop. As it will never exit the loop. So you have to make sure that if you create, so when you create an iteration variable, therefore, when you create an iteration variable, make sure to update it. Make sure to update it so that at some point, the condition for the while loop will be false. For the while loop will be false. Will be false. Meaning, and let's use the example up here. So you know num is equal to 5. That's what you set it to. And you know that num is greater, so you set the while condition to num being greater than 0. So if it's 5, you need to make sure that you need to update the variable so that at some point the variable is equal to 0. So that way the loop is exited. That's why if you look up here, I did what? I did n equals to n minus 1. N minus 1. So that way it keeps on going smaller and smaller until it reaches 0. If I decided to put num equals to num plus 1, let's just say num plus 1, then what's going to happen? Let's put this right here. So I'm going to move this. I'm going to show you up here. Num, and then output. So the value of num initially is 5. Okay? We have a 5. Is 5 greater than 0? Yes. So you'll print 5 and you'll print looping. And let's say down here I put num equals to num plus 1. Okay, so now num equals num plus 1, num will be 5, it'll be 6. Then, is 6 greater than 0? Yes, so it'll be 6, and then it'll print out looping. Same thing, num equals num plus 1, update the value to 7. Is 7 greater than 0? Yes, so 7, looping. Then I'll go up by 1, 8. 8, looping. So you notice, again, we're going to have an infinite loop here. So because even though you have updated the iteration variable here, even though you've updated it here, this condition, you've actually done the wrong update, because this condition will never be false, because you started with a number greater than 0, and you need this condition to be false, which means that you have to eventually reach a point where that number is either equal to 0 or less than 0 in order for this to be false. So this is why it is important to be cognizant, as I mentioned here. Make sure to update it so that at some point the condition for the while loop will be false. So that's why you're doing num minus 1, so that is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and then boom, once it hits 0, this condition will be false. So that is the first type of while loop that we will be covering in this class. So so now the second type of while loop is the following. The second type of while loop is the following. Number 2. This is what we call a while true loop. This will be very, very important in this class. While true loop. Technically speaking, this is an infinite loop. Technically speaking, this is an infinite loop. And I'll explain why in a second. This loop is commonly used for one use case. Commonly used when you want to repeatedly ask the user for input. Okay, so what does that mean? So sometimes, let's say for example, you're at a restaurant and you're placing an order. The waiter, the cashier asks you, what would you like? You say, I want, I don't know, I want a smash burger, right? And then after that, she says, okay, what else would you like? Then you say, I want like fries with that. Then she asks you, what else would you like? I'd like a drink with that. She keeps on asking you, okay, what else, until you say, that's it. Once you say that's it, then she stops talking. Otherwise, she'll keep on asking you on and on and on. What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? What do you want? Until you say, okay, no, that's it. That's my order. So the idea is sometimes you want to ask the user for input repeatedly on and on and on and on and on and on until you're waiting for them to type something down that signals to you that you are done. And this is where this is very important. So I will give you an example. Now, for first and foremost, this is called while, and this will be very, very, very important in this class. While true. The reason, so this is technically infinite. This is infinite. This is technically infinite. Why? Because true will always be true. Because true can never ever equal to false. True can never equal to false. So every single time the loop comes up, it'll say while true, while true. True can never be false. So this is from the outset, from the looking in, from the outside, this is an infinite loop, but it is not. Why? Because while true. And then let's say, for example, I want to ask the user, let's just say course equals to input, enter your course, and then you say type done to stop. Okay, so now you're asking the user, type in a course. Let's say, for example, you're creating you want to create an average calculator that someone puts in all the courses that they have, and then the grades, and You calculate the average. So you keep on asking the user for one course after another, course after course after course after course after course. Okay. Now, the question is, how do we break out of this while loop? So the person enters their course. Let's say they enter in physics. When they enter in physics, they come up here. While true, yeah, that's true. So then they put in, let's say in your case, computer science. Then after that, it comes up here again. And then they say math. Then true is true. So it'll come up here again. And then you put in biology. And then again, you come up here again. And then after that, you're done. You only have 4 courses. So how is it possible? How are you going to break out of this? This is where the concept of a break statement comes into play. So let's say we have this, for example. So we have if the course they put in equals, because we said right here, right? Type done to stop, type done to stop. So you know if they type it done, that means that they don't have any more courses and you want to finish this loop. So if course equals done, meaning that what they typed in, because what they typed in is stored in this variable course. So if they typed in done, then we use what's called break. When used in a loop, the word break literally breaks out of the loop. Breaks out of the loop. So in this case, let's say, for example, again, going back to the example, someone puts in a course, they say, I want to take, so they ask the course, they put in computer science. Then I'll come up here, put in computer science, comes up here, while true, yes. Well, true is always true, so it'll come back again. Then you put in physics, comes back here again. Then you put in bio, comes back here again. Then it comes here, because, and this is always going to be false, right? Because you put in physics, computer science, bio, you haven't put in done yet. Then the user types in done after 4 courses. Then this is going to be true because the user typed in done. As soon as that happened, break, it'll now break out of the loop and it'll move on to the next line. Let's just say we put here print finished. It will then break out of the loop and come here. Does that make sense? And one thing I forgot to mention this earlier. But just like with if statements, you have to indent. All of the lines inside of the while block. Okay? So just like here, again, vertical line test. This is indented. This is indented. This is indented. If you go all the way down, this is not indented, so this is not part of the block. So let me give you an example of how we put this all into action. So example. Ask the user continuously for numbers until they type in 0. Then display or print the total of all the numbers they entered. So what do I mean here? So, for example, so first of all, again, when you're given a question, look at the variables that are at play. First of all, you look at the fact that you have numbers, so you're going to have a variable that stores each number. Then you're going to have total. You're going to have 2 variables. So how do you do this? First things first, the initial value of the total will be 0. Yes? Then, so this is where the while true comes in. Why? Because whenever you see the word, whenever I tell you, ask the user continuously until, if you see these words, this idea that I'm asking you to continuously ask the user for something, you know that you're going to use a while true loop. Just know that by default. So you put in while true, num, because this is the number you're asking the user, equals to int. Now you notice up here, for input, I didn't add the int here. Why? Because when you enter a course, that will be a string, computer science, bio, physics. Whereas here, I'm expecting the user to enter a number, so I have to wrap all the input into with the word int around it. Enter a number, type 0 to exit. All right. Now I say that, so the user enters a number 10, 15, 20, 30. However, we need to make sure until they type in 0. As soon as they type in 0, that means that I have given you the condition to break out of the while loop. So I check, first things first, if the number they entered is equals to 0. If that is the case, then you will have to, you'll have to break. You have to break. Yes? Because as soon as the user puts in the 0, you want to break out of this while loop. Otherwise, you can put an else here if you want. Else, just to make it easier for yourself. So if they put in anything other than 0, whether it be negative, positive, doesn't matter. The total, you have to update the total, right? Because you want to take the total and you have to add the number to it that they just entered. So total plus num. So initially 0, they put in 5, 0 plus 5, 5. Then you go back around, they put in 10. So then is 10 equal to 0? No, so you're going to move to the else statement. Then total equals to total, which at this case is 5 from the last iteration, plus 15, which is 20, and so on and so forth. And then once they put in 0, at the bottom, once you exit the loop, you put print total. That, because that total is continuously updated with every number, so you know at the end, once you exit, because again, vertical line test, you'll see indented, 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 not indented. This is not indented right here. This is not indented, so that's how you know that this is not part of the loop. So once it exits the loop, whatever the updated value of total is what will be printed here, which will be the sum that was added every single time you added a number. Okay. Now, the first type of while loop right here, this one, while n greater than 0, this and that, this will most likely not come up in any coding questions in this class. It'll be more for, I'll ask you these for tracing questions, where I will give you a piece of code, and then I will tell you, for example, write what the output is. When it comes to coding questions, I will mostly ask you questions that will require a while true loop, because an easier alternative to using while loops with iteration variables is what are called for loops, which is what we will discuss in the next video, inshallah.